Hi there, my name is Shelley DeGuero, and I am going to walk you through a quick webinar that will provide you some training on the Cultures of Thinking session that each of you will be facilitating at the very beginning of in-service on September 15th. To provide some logistical information, we wanted to share that materials will be at your site on the morning of in-service. Each facilitator will receive a packet that contains the attendance sheets, markers, sticky notes, pens, and copies of materials for this 1-hour session. There will be a lead person assigned to each location that will be able to help you find your room and provide any support that you need at the location. Rooms and schools will be open at 7 a.m. for you to get set up and be ready to go for the day. Please ensure that you take attendance for each session. You are not required to enter it into Saba, but we do need those attendance sheets either turned into the site lead at the end of the day or sent to the PLCC, to Justin Peterson, or you can take a picture with your phone and send it to Amanda Gould. Feedback will also be provided to participants through Saba at the end of the day. If you're not sure about your location, please check the email sent from Amanda Gould. There is a spreadsheet that provides the locations for every session. Email us if you have any questions. The outcomes for this training session. You will understand how Cultures of Thinking is connected to our work in APS, and we would like to provide you the tools and resources so that you can feel successful facilitating this whole group session. Please know that participants coming into your session may have a lot of understanding about Cultures of Thinking, or it may be the first time they've heard about it. The purpose of this session is to engage adults in a culture of thinking so that they can ground the learning that they do for their day in some of the 8 forces, and also ground it thinking about a student that they are going to consider as they go through the day. We've had some previous learning provided from Ron Richart. He has been in our district a few times now. The Math Curriculum Adoption Committee has engaged in a book study around Cultures of Thinking, and they use those look-fors in learning walks and in discussions with teachers about what we want for kids. Many schools this year are digging into this learning around Cultures of Thinking. It will help you just to take a quick pause to have the facilitator guide in front of you for this next part. You can find the facilitator guide in the APS Professional Learning Facilitator Team Drive that Amanda Gould shared with you. Feel free to pause the webinar so you can print this out or be ready to take notes as you watch the rest of the slides. This is the first slide that will appear for participants. Please make sure that you review a quick revision or a quick discussion on the vision and mission, and have teachers introduce themselves at their tables and maybe give a quick indication of where they are in their learning about Cultures of Thinking. Please read these outcomes to teachers at the beginning. Educators will understand an overview of the 8 cultural forces that shape group culture, and they will understand how creating Cultures of Thinking aligns with the APS Strategic Plan Goal number 2. A culture of thinking aligns with Strategic Plan Goal number 2 because as learners, we learn best through opportunities to consider those skills and practice how we might best implement them. Just a side note on the slides that you have, as we circled a set of skills, that part is an annotation, so you're going to want to hit enter to have the circle appear on your slide. Have someone in the room read aloud this quote. Alongside more traditional academic skills, the cultivation and development of thinking skills will allow us to transform our schools and classrooms into the kinds of learning communities worthy of our students, where student thinking is valued, visible, and actively promoted. Please feel free to add a personal story about anything you've thought about cultures of thinking and why this is so critical for us to think about as a district. In order to create classrooms worthy of our community, we must carefully tend to and cultivate a strong learning culture. Even if a teacher's content and/or pedagogical knowledge is still growing, students will learn where the group culture is strong. Now we'd like to frame our time together by connecting our work to a student that has impacted our lives as educators. At this point, you want to think of a student that comes to mind that sticks with you as an educator and provide a brief description about why. Talk about when you're faced with challenges as an educator. Sometimes it helps to go back and think about that student to really change your perspective on what our students might need from us in order to rise to their full potential. Have participants think of a student that sticks with them. Give them a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, to think of that student, write down their name, and then write down a sentence or two about why. After they are done doing this, you can have them turn and talk with an elbow partner so that each partner can share who their student is and why they chose them. Slide 7 will introduce the 8 cultural forces that shape a group culture. And it's important to note where these came from. So mention that they came from Ron Ritchhardt's book, Creating Cultures of Thinking. And if you didn't already talk about how Ron has supported our district through these professional learning opportunities, now is a good time to do that. I think it's also important to note that there are many schools who have engaged in some of this learning and are in different phases of implementing learning around the cultural forces. And some schools are just beginning this work. No matter where you are, it's always supportive to dive back in and make connections to your own learning and the learning you need to leverage more and more of these forces in your classroom. So these forces create the culture in every group. They are already happening in your classrooms, whether or not you notice them. We want to make sure that teachers understand that we're not asking them to take something on that they can't connect to their work. And that if they pay attention and reflect on some of these forces as they learn today, that they will be able to make lots of connections to what they are already doing and the strengths that they already have in place. There is a handout that is provided to you in the materials on the 8 forces. At this time, you can either have a copy at tables or hand them out at this time. Give participants 5 minutes to review them, and you're going to ask them to then choose one force to focus on for the next part. After they've read about all 8 forces, you're asking them to dive into one force. There are copies of the 8 forces. There are one-pagers that are provided to you in your materials. Each force has its own page. So you're going to want to have a way that participants can choose a force and be in a small group with other people who have chosen that same force. Ask them to read and annotate as needed, keeping in mind how it connects to their student and the skills that they need to shape their successful future. Please note there's a section called self-assessment in each reading. So if participants are a coach or in another role outside the classroom, they can still think about what they have seen in classrooms they support in order to deepen their understandings about what these might look like and sound like in the classrooms. After they have about 5 minutes to read, give the group about 3 minutes to turn and talk about what they read, what surprised them, what challenged or confirmed their thinking, and what are they still wondering. After they've done this reading, you are going to have an opportunity to share with a video with them. In your team drive, we recommend that you access these slides, go through them, and choose the video that works best for you. There's a high school social studies video, and on this slide there is a middle school writing mini lesson video. and there's an elementary math number talk. Choose the video that meets the needs of the learners in front of you. We recommend you watch the video yourself and think about the connections that you can make between the 8 forces in the video, and ask them as they're watching the video to keep these in mind and be able to connect that after the end. We do recommend that they don't take any notes during the video, just watch and listen. After they watch the video, give them about 2 minutes to jot down 2 to 3 connections that they were able to make. And then give them another minute or 2 to turn and talk with an elbow partner in their groups. After they've had some quiet reasoning time and some time to share in their groups about their force, ask them to please engage with others in the room who chose a different force. At this time, they will do a give one, get one routine to find a partner in the room who is not in their current group. Each person shares one of their connections that they made, either on a sticky note or just however they captured that. And after a couple of minutes, you can ask them to find a new partner. Change partners at least 2 times, but if you have time, you can go for 3 or 4. This is the final slide for this morning's session. We want them to please complete this quick Bitly form that will just ask the question, how does this session help me think about leveraging a cultural force towards thinking? And they will be asked to provide 1 word that they are thinking about after engaging in this session. You can have a discussion with the group about how we want the learning that they've engaged in during this short 1-hour overview in cultures of thinking, and how we want them to connect that to their student, and how this session helps them ensure their students are acquiring these needed skills. This concludes the slides for the Cultures of Thinking training. Please email Shelley DeGuero or John Dumbleton or Amanda Gould if you have any questions about this first 1-hour Cultures of Thinking training. You will find all of the resources needed, along with all digital copies of the materials that will be provided during this session, in the APS Professional Learning Facilitator Team Drive, and there is a folder titled Whole Group Morning Session. We recommend you review these materials, have the facilitator guide printed out for you, and make it your own. Talk about your own experiences with Cultures of Thinking and why this work is so important to the work that we're doing in APS, connected to the strategic plan in providing students those skills that they need, not just the academic skills, but the thinking skills that they need to be successful. Thanks and enjoy your day.